So this is going to be a slightly different style of video because it's going to take a lot longer, probably several weeks, to put all of it together. But I wanted to film this video for anyone who's in the same position that I am currently, of trying to get off a particular medication and finding it really difficult. I've looked for a lot of information online and I've not found much beyond horror stories. And my treatment team also haven't been entirely sure about which direction to take with regards to getting me off this. So we're currently trying to put me onto another medication that will hopefully mitigate some of the side effects I'm experiencing when trying to get off this particular medication. So this whole video is going to be me kind of documenting my experience with this. So, the medication I'm trying to get off is Venlafaxine. And if you've been on the medication and tried to get off it yourself, that probably causes instant memories to flood into your brain because, at least in my experience, it's horrible to get off. It's been a great medication and a great help while I needed it, but the side effects that I've had on it have been pretty bad in themselves. Like, I've had night sweats for the past 2 years, which is just gross and not fun to deal with. It also gives me brain zaps whenever I get close to the 24-hour mark from when I last took my last dose. So as soon as the levels of it drop in my body, I get really, really bad withdrawal effects. And that's essentially what I've been dealing with while trying to get off this, is I get brain zaps, I get dizzy, I get headaches, I get nauseated, I feel ill. And it just feels, it's the kind of vertigo, like every time I move, the world just spins and my brain feels like it's bouncing in my head, and it's horrible. So what we're doing at the moment is putting me onto citalopram at 20 milligrams for 2 weeks to hopefully bring the levels of that up to kind of a therapeutic level in my body, in the hopes that I can then stop taking the Venlafaxine. And my treatment team's thinking is that the citalopram should act on the same receptors in my brain as the Venlafaxine. So if the citalopram's there, I shouldn't get the brain zaps and the withdrawal effects, and then I can titrate down off the citalopram, which is known to be easier to come off. So, with all of that backstory, at the moment I am 7 days into taking the citalopram. So, it made me remember why I don't like SSRIs in the first place, because the majority of the serotonin production in your body actually happens in your stomach. So for me, it gives me like constant butterflies, and I just feel really like churny in my stomach, and it kills my appetite completely, which isn't great in someone with a history of an eating disorder. And it just makes me feel a bit crap generally, but it's not unbearable, which coming off Venlafaxine on its own is. I'm on 37.5 milligrams at the moment, I forgot to mention that, which is the lowest dose, and it doesn't come in a liquid form, so I can't titrate down off it any more slowly than this. You kind of get to 37.5 and then you drop off the end. So yeah, I've got 1 more week of taking the citalopram before I stop taking the Venlafaxine. So I probably won't record much over the next week unless anything major happens with taking the citalopram, because at the moment nothing massive is changing, which is why I hadn't filmed up until today at the 1 week point, because I wanted to see how I did on the citalopram. But as soon as I stop the Venlafaxine, I want to document what happens. Hopefully it'll be fine, and I can document it as kind of a, hey look, you can do it, you can get off it and not feel like death. But if it is grim, it'll be useful for me to show my doctors what I mean when I say it's grim, and hopefully I can then work with my treatment team to find a better option, and it just might give people more idea of what to expect when trying to get off it. So yeah, that's the purpose of this video, and I will see you probably in about a week. Hey! So this is Future Meg popping in because my footage from this part got corrupted, but I'm gonna take you through basically what happened next. And I think one of the main things you'll probably immediately notice is partly the trains, but also the difference in how I am since coming off this medication. I've been rewatching the footage as I put the video together, and geez, I sound miserable in the first part, and I'm so glad I don't feel that way anymore. I can't remember exactly how I was feeling in those clips, but I certainly sound less cheerful and less with it than I am now. So, the first clip you just saw was a week into taking the citalopram, and the only thing it had really done was nuked my appetite, which isn't hugely helpful, but it wasn't that bad. And then I continued taking the citalopram, I upped my dosage, and I stayed on that along with the venlafaxine for 2 weeks. And that was honestly fine. Nothing major happened at that point, and I was very apprehensive to stop taking the venlafaxine, as you've probably heard from that first clip. But when I stopped it and I was on the citalopram, nothing happened. The brain zaps didn't happen. It did exactly what my treatment team were basically hoping it would. It seemed to work on the same receptors, or it did something that basically stopped the withdrawal effects from happening. So that part of the process was completely fine. Anxiety provoking in itself, but I felt fine. The next clip you're going to see is when I stopped half of the citalopram, so when I started dropping my dose on that. And that was another 2 weeks after stopping the venlafaxine. And during that time, I had been fine in terms of side effects, but getting increasingly antsy to get off the citalopram, because I was basically split 50-50 in my brain between this has been fine so far, if this is fine then I just want to get off it and then I'll be off it, and I want to lower the dosage because I'm sure something bad is going to happen at some point and I just want to get it over with. So that was kind of where I was during this interim period, for which my footage evaporated. But yeah, the middle part, absolutely fine, nothing to worry about and nothing much to report here. So I will let past Meg, although future Meg in the process, tell you what happened when I started dropping the dose of citalopram. Hey everyone, so please forgive me if this is terribly filmed. I am not used to vlogging at all, and you can also probably hear Charlie in the background calling while playing CSGO. But I wanted to do a little bit of a vlog update on the process of coming off medication. So I stopped taking the venlafaxine a few days ago after titrating the citalopram into my system for 2 weeks, and that transition was actually fairly okay in terms of like stopping the venlafaxine. You've already heard about the process of starting the citalopram, but I'm now a couple of days into coming off the citalopram, so I cut my dose in half because I was feeling pretty okay and I wanted to get off this, and now I feel pretty grim. The withdrawals are definitely back. I'm getting the brain zaps again. Everything makes me feel sick. I'm exhausted. My stomach feels just wrong and horrible. And it's not a fun process at all. So I might have to go back up onto the previous dose of the citalopram, but it's not to a point where it's completely intolerable. So I do kind of want to see if I can stick with it and get off the citalopram, because I just want to be off this medication and then I can reassess how things are going in general. I'm also losing my train of thought all the time, and I don't know if that's to do with medication or just stuff generally. I don't know. I feel like I was pretty stable on the venlafaxine, and it's really frustrating to feel less stable now I'm trying to come off it, because I know it worked for me in terms of helping my mental health. It was just that the side effects were so grim that I didn't want to stay on it. But yeah, coming off medication is shit. Everything is up in the air. I have no appetite, I'm getting brain zaps, I can't focus on anything, I can't concentrate on anything, I have no motivation to do anything, nothing is enjoyable. But it is difficult to tell whether that's because of coming off the medication or whether it's just a reaction to being socially isolated and bored as hell for weeks on end. And it also feels really wrong to be complaining about that sort of thing when it's a safety measure and I'm lucky to not have the virus, and like, I don't want in any way my expressing how I'm feeling about something to come across as me complaining about the fact that I have to do it, because I don't mind having to do it. It keeps me safe and it keeps other people safe, and that's absolutely fine. But it's a weird one to balance, and I just think we should be able to talk about the way that it's impacting upon our mental health, because then we can support each other and make it easier to stick to these procedures that are helping people and keeping people safe. Yeah, and I'll let you know at some point in a couple of days if my brain still feels like it's being periodically electrocuted, which is, oh god. I always feel like I should quantify the things that I'm saying, because if it could come off the wrong way and hurt someone, I don't want it to, so I feel like I should preemptively apologise for any offensive ways that things, like not fairly innocuous things that I'm saying could come off. So that was not an electroconvulsive therapy joke, it's just that the brain zaps genuinely do make me feel like my brain is being electrocuted. So yeah, I'm gonna go now, and I hope you've enjoyed hearing Charlie call in the background. Hey, so final update time. I am officially off Venlafaxine. I stopped taking the citalopram about 4 or 5 days ago, so it's fully out of my system now, and the withdrawal effects have come back again. I think in the last clip you saw me talking about how dropping my dose of citalopram had brought the brain zaps back, and it's definitely been that way again with stopping the citalopram altogether, but it's not been anywhere near as bad as it was on the previous occasions when I tried to come off the Venlafaxine. I think the only thing I would say is that because I've tried this so many times now, I kind of have got used to the brain zaps a little bit and the withdrawal effects of coming off medication, so I don't know whether I'm able to give like a completely kind of clean slate analysis of how bad it is now versus the attempts before to come off the Venlafaxine, but I am so glad to be off it. The main side effect, I don't know if I've mentioned this in other clips, but the main side effect of the Venlafaxine that made my life miserable was night sweats, which is really not cute to talk about, but coming off it, and since switching to the citalopram and stopping the citalopram, touch wood, the night sweats have gone. I'm actually just going to touch something wooden real quick. That has been the biggest change to my quality of life. I knew I hated them and I knew they made me miserable, but I didn't realise how much of a difference it would make to the experience of waking up in the morning not having the night sweats. The ways I tried to come off the Venlafaxine before had been switching from the standard Venlafaxine to the extended release, and then gradually lowering my dose before trying to just drop off the lowest dose, because the lowest dose of Venlafaxine is 37.5 milligrams, and I started on 75, and getting down to 37.5 wasn't all that bad, but then trying to drop off that cliff at the end, it felt like the worst hangover of my life combined with my brain being electrocuted. I don't mean that to sound crass at all, because I know people do have like genuinely electroconvulsive therapy, but the brain zaps, the only way I can describe it is like somebody shocking my brain. It's kind of like when someone makes you jump and you get that like rush of adrenaline and your brain kind of jolts. It feels like that, but every time I move my eyes too much, or every time I move my head, or every time I stand up, or every time I think of something, like my thoughts will make my brain feel like it's being electrocuted. So this process hasn't been fun, but it's definitely been the most tolerable way of coming off the Venlafaxine. I don't think, just because I experienced such severe withdrawal effects from trying to come off it, I don't think there would have been a method where I could come off it without experiencing any withdrawal effects. One of the most frustrating things about it is that venlafaxine is one of the medications that's actually helped my mental health the most, but the side effects were so intolerable, and the effect that the side effects had on my quality of life was so dramatic that that kind of overrode the positive effects that it was having on my mental health. So yeah, I am officially off the venlafaxine and off the citalopram. As I mentioned, I am getting some withdrawal side effects still, but on day 4 or 5, where we are now, they're less intense than they were on the first couple of days. And they're also nowhere near intense enough for me to consider going back on the medication. I can tolerate this level of withdrawal effect, knowing that it's all out of my system, and I'm now kind of on the home run to the side effects hopefully stopping. One thing I'm going to drop in just for, well, partly for the entertainment value and partly just in case any of you have experienced this and don't know what it is something that happened a couple of days after I stopped the citalopram completely. Now, my care team aren't 100% sure if this is at all related to coming off the medication or if it's just something else entirely. But what basically happened was the second night that I hadn't taken the citalopram, I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I looked at the window and I could see a spider walking merrily up the window pane. And in my sort of half asleep state, I watched it for a second and then it kicked into my brain what I was looking at. And I shot up in bed and tried to like open the window, because our window is like fake double glazing because we live in a listed building. So there's a sliding window first before you get to a window that opens like a door, I guess. And I was trying to open this window and also trying to work out which side of the glass this spider was on. And my partner woke up and was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "There's a spider, there's a spider." And he looks around and goes, "No, there's not." And I turned to look at him, and all I could see, all over the walls, all over the ceiling, everywhere around the room, was massive spiders, like crawling everywhere. Oh, it gives me the creeps, like talking about it. But all I could see was spiders everywhere. And I turned to my partner and was like, "There's spiders, there's spiders." And he was like, "No, there's not." And my brain suddenly goes, "You're hallucinating." And I looked around and was like, "Fuck, I'm hallucinating spiders." And I just shut my eyes and slammed my face into the pillow. And my partner, bless him, it's 4 in the morning, he's just been woken up, he's trying to work out what the hell is going on, just goes, "It's okay, it's alright, I'll leave the light on for a bit." And eventually I fell back asleep, but while I was curled up with my face in the pillow, it was like full body shaking, like absolutely terrified, because they looked completely real to me. They were massive. Like the one on the window was kind of smaller, but the ones that were crawling all over the walls were massive, like tarantula sized. And I called my therapist the next day and was like, "This happened last night, like what the hell is this?" And she got one of the team's psychiatrists to call me, and he talked it through with me, asked me a load of questions about what had been going on, and then told me it was a hypnagogic hallucination, which apparently is a type of hallucination that can happen as you're coming out of sleep. And there's also another similar kind that can happen as you're falling asleep. So he told me it's probably not to do with coming off the medication. It could be, but it probably isn't. It's just something that anyone can experience, and while that doesn't make it any less frightening, it's not anything to worry about. And he basically told me that it's unlikely to happen again, because I was really scared to go to sleep the next night in case I woke up again with spiders everywhere. And it didn't end up happening again, so thankfully the psychiatrist was right. But yeah, that was a weird night in my life this week, which I thought you might like to hear about, seeing as this is a vlog. But yeah, other than that, nothing overly wild or exciting has happened while coming off the medication. So generally, I'd say it's not the worst experience that I've had, and I would hope if you're trying to do the same thing, it won't be the worst experience you've had either. I will give future updates on kind of when the withdrawal effects finally subside on my Twitter and my Instagram probably. So if you want to hear how long it takes for the withdrawal effects to stop completely, follow me on there. But as of this point right now, the withdrawal effects are mild and tolerable, and the side effects I was getting from being on the medication have finally stopped. I was so happy the first morning I woke up and realized that I hadn't had night sweats the night before, and I was so afraid of celebrating it because it's been 2 years that I've been experiencing that, and 2 years that I've been trying to get off the medication, and it just felt like it was too good to be true for me to have got to a point in coming off the medication where it was just going to stop and go away and not be part of my life anymore. But that seems to be the case, so I'm incredibly pleased. And I want to make it clear, I'm not making this video to say that Venlafaxine is an awful drug or an evil drug, or that if you're on it you should come off it, or that if your doctor's offering it to you you shouldn't take it, because I know there are lots of people for whom Venlafaxine works really well and they don't get horrific side effects. On the other hand, I do know of a lot of people who have had a lot of trouble getting off Venlafaxine, and within the psychiatric community it does seem to be well known for being difficult to titrate off. However, if this video tells you anything, it's that it is possible and it can be done in a way that is tolerable. Not fun, not nice, but tolerable. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. If you want any videos from me on other medications that I've tried, or my experience and thoughts on medication in general, or if you just have any other things that you want to see from me, let me know. Follow me on my social media. I'm most active on TikTok actually, so if you want to see more stories, especially stories from my time in psychiatric hospitals, follow me on TikTok. The link is down below. I hope you're keeping well and staying safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye!